some of the locations you've been to, maybe your favourite or the most interesting, or where you found the most unexpected things?
Wow, gosh. I actually did try and think my way through this one before you came today. It's incredibly difficult to pull out specifics, but certainly the one that most people find perhaps the most appealing of the episodes is the Winnick one.
Right.
And of course, being from Warrington, I've got to say that the whole Winnick episode really, it starts...
Close to your heart.
Well, it starts the first Celtic Warrington book that I ever wrote, and it becomes the first episode then of the Lost Treasures series. So that is a very special episode at a special location. But then there's so many other things. We went to Dinligwy, which is the Iron Age sort of Romano-British type settlement on Anglesey. That was just such an incredibly magical day. And I've got to say, off camera, what you don't see is the fact that we went into certain subject areas that we were obviously not meant to go into, and all the equipment packed up and refused to work. And yet, sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. You see what I mean? So
do you want to expand on that a little bit?
Well, we were talking about prehistoric surveying and how the Druids would have originally set that village up, and how it was actually surveyed. You can see, and that gets into the programme. The surveying bit actually gets in. And there's a bit where I lean back on a stone and talk about lines of sight and what have you. Then I start to talk about sacred geometry. Bang, it just goes off completely. Now, anyone that knows anything about technology, my microphone is tuned to a certain frequency because it's cordless, obviously it's a transmitter, and the one on the camera is also tuned to a different frequency. The one on the camera suddenly runs up the frequencies for no apparent reason. It retunes itself, and it took us perhaps a good hour to find out what had actually gone wrong, because obviously you look for mechanical things, not things like that, and no apparent reason why it should happen. And so we get that happens a lot. That things like that happens a lot. Locations, Williamson's tunnels. I mean, that was a fantastic exploring under Liverpool. That was superb. And standing on top of the Liver building, 165 feet up, with people walking underneath like ants, And I look very heroic on the end of that Liverpool episode, but I'm actually terrified because I'm on the edge of a vertical drop, Yeah.
Now, you do more than just archaeology, don't you? You talk to people, you get past histories, you get stories, you hear about mythology of an area. Which I think is a bit beyond what most other documentaries do, isn't it?
Yes, we...
you look into the social history of the area as well.
There's an aspect to history that is lost if you just go down the academic route. All the members of the team are firm believers that what we're actually doing is we're looking back to people of the past. But people are not the sum total of the things that you dig up from the ground. There's a lot more to that. So if we can sort of push into, if you like, push beyond those finds and try to draw out what those people would have been like, what they thought, what they believed, anything at all which they had then which might be of interest to us now, if we can draw that out as well. Some of it's guesswork, it has to be, but some of it isn't, so we do go into other areas.
Yeah. Now you've done talks on the Templars, Gnostics, the lost parts of the Bible.
Gnostics, gnosis is
knowledge,
the pursuit of
it?
knowledge, where most faiths, shall we say, place their faith in either what we have within us as human beings to get us through and save us, or they place their faith in things that are in the environment outside of us, be it gods, goddesses, elements, whatever. The difference with Gnostics is we are incredibly analytical, matter of fact, and it's based on experience and balance in every area. So what you end up with is salvation, if that's the right word to use, by knowledge, rather than just by, shall we say, blind faith or emotional experience or whatever. That's part of it because it's a completely rounded belief system. It's got elements of every religion. I was thinking about it this morning, actually. I was thinking in some areas it's actually quite Buddhist in its outlook, because the idea is to come onto the planet, we're sent from elsewhere, we arrive here, and then you just tread carefully, the whole time. You've got to be very careful what you do, very careful what you say, who you upset, what resources you use, etc., etc. And then hopefully you leave, in a sense, without leaving any footprints. You don't leave any tracks behind you. And if you look back at what I would term the greatest of civilizations in the past, I mean, my own personal preference is the Celts.
Right.
They come, they go, they don't leave anything behind. They can live on an archaeological site for 600 years. All you'll find is a ring of post holes and a hearth. maybe if you look at the odd scattered burials, but that's it. That is real civilization, where you can come and go. Unlike the Romans, of course, who they leave virtually everything behind. This massive, great pile of rubbish, and I'm sure in the 21st century we're going to do the same. Archaeologists will look back to this time and think, by gum, didn't they waste some rubbish? Because we're leaving these huge piles of rubbish behind. But there are other paths, other faiths that don't do that. So, I mean, that's part of it. Gnostics, we believe in a huge, almighty, invisible God.
Because I was going to ask you about the Gnostic view of deity, because it's
it's very different.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
Do you have a dualistic view of deity?
Well, it's more like a company structure. That's the best way I can do it. Like a flow diagram for a company, okay? At the top, you've got the urge, which is the almighty, absolutely, completely, utterly, whatever you decide God is at the top, but is a bit too big for us, okay? Unknowable. It's behind everything else.
So you turn it into something
that you
that's
can the urge. That's
right.
the urge,
okay.
And then it comes down to the demiurge, which is then what we can know about God and about divinity. So that's like the next step down. Now, the early Gnostics were actually a bit naughty, some of them, because they said that the demiurge was the Christian God, because the urge wouldn't actually create anything. The urge wouldn't be involved in that at all. They said that the demiurge is actually the creator God. But that's a little bit naughty, because the early Gnostics also thought that everything physical was evil.
Right.
So they have this very inverted view, which is it's not the view that I hold to. I put the demiurge perhaps level with characters like Christ, who quite obviously is a chip off the old block, but nevertheless is still physically walking amongst us. You know what I mean? It's something that's knowable, tangible, touchable, understandable.
Still physically walking amongst us?
Oh yeah, because he never died. That's another Gnostic belief.
Right. Tell us a little bit more about that.
He ascended into heaven physically, but he wasn't the only person to do that. There are at least 4 characters in the Bible that have done that, in addition to him, like Elijah and Elisha and Enoch, who walked with God and was not, and to some extent John the Baptist. They all actually were translated, the term is translated from this world to the next. And hopefully at the end of the day, me as well. So don't waste your time looking for a grave if I disappear. It's something to aspire to.
Now, Gnostics also have a reputation for looking beyond the written text and finding codes within the Bible. And I mean, I've heard you give talks on the Gnostic Gospels, the Gospel of Thomas, for example, and messages within that. I mean, what do you think that, for example, Christians are overlooking?
Well, apart from the entire Bible. Oh, I'm not allowed to say that, am I?
Oh, why not?
Why not? The problem you've got, I think, with any religion that decides to take on board a label is that if you drag something down to the human level and you take on board a label, then you've automatically limited it straight away, immediately. You've reduced it to its lowest common denominator. And that's something that every world religion is guilty of. People need pegs to hang hats on, and that's basically what that exercise is. Gnostics are the other way round. Because of our pursuit of matter-of-factness, if you like, we will read something and then go away and think around it. We may accept it, we may not. We'll weigh it against other evidence.
So the written text is just the starting point
it's the
for
starting
your own
point. You've got to punch back beyond what the words are actually saying. You've got to get to what they actually mean. It's the gnosis, it's the knowledge that's behind it, which applies to every single form of writing that you're likely to run across in the course of researching. So it's not just the Gospel of Thomas or the other the other more Gnostic Gospels like Enoch and Mary and Philip and Peter. It's not just that. And of course, with me, I also adhere quite closely to the 66 books of the Bible as well, but with a different viewpoint.